Yes.
All right. Well, all right. I had to turn the mics on because we were getting down, and before we started rolling here, thank you so much for coming in. And the Julie is with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming on. Really appreciate that. Now, you are one of the people. Today I finally met you in person, real life.
Yes.
You're real.
This is real life.
This is real life.
Yes.
We met online on the Instagrams.
Yes.
Fellow photographers following each other for a while now.
For years.
Yeah.
Years now. Yeah.
It has been a minute there.
Yeah.
Now, as I was saying earlier before, I just loved following you along and seeing how much better you've gotten in your photography, and I've seen you growing, and I love that.
Thank you.
It's just good to see someone grow like that. Now, it's are you just shooting a lot? How are you learning to continue your craft and getting better at photography?
I think throwing myself out there, no matter what it is, whether it's I'm going to photograph this bird, I'm going to photograph this family, I'm going to photograph a baby, a dog, which I've kind of gotten away from with the babies. They're a little difficult. Doing weddings for friends. I don't think I would professionally photograph a wedding. A small wedding I would do, which I've done a few of those. But just really throwing myself into anything and everything. Has been the best experience and lessons for me. Reaching out to fellow photographers that I admire, like yourself, and Jessica Liflin, Kendra Luck, Josie Perez. I love Lee Jeffrey stuff, and just watching and learning. And really, it's about how I see somebody or something. And there's sometimes when I feel really compelled to show that person or that thing how they look in my eyes. I think it's important.
I love that. I mean, it's fair to say that you probably photograph more than the average person as far as you bring your camera with you a lot where you go, and you're just always constantly looking for an image sort of thing, right?
Yes.
Man, I love that. There's I think that's something that, as far as whatever tool we're using to create, I think it's important to always work on the craft and do that, and just without trying to sound again such a being a dead horse. That's one of the things I keep saying here. You always want to create and always want to learn your craft in any avenue that you do. You belong to anything like a community outside of a group of people outside of online? Do you meet up or do photo walks or anything like that?
No, I was in a women's group, amazing, wild women. And there are authors, photographers, artists. I mean, just these women are incredible. And they were a huge impact on me. And I got to, be a part of that group for a long time. And that was a really big commitment. And so, it kind of came to a point where I couldn't commit to that anymore, which was difficult. It was a difficult choice for me to make. But I just sort of fly by the seat of my pants, really. When you reached out to me, that's something. When somebody reaches out to me or I feel compelled to reach out, that's when I go and I'm a part of that. But I'm not a part of any community or with regard to photography.
Okay. Do you think it's more like a lone wolf sort of thing, or
Always.
would you open to do that sort of thing?
I'm open, but a friend of mine in Payson was driving by another friend of ours, his house, and I was sitting out front on the porch, and he said, I was going to stop, but I didn't want to scare the wolf away. And I think that really describes how I am. I'm very social. I'm very outgoing, but I can be, very quiet to myself. I can entertain myself and just kind of stay, definitely lone wolf.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I like to collaborate. I've collaborated with friends. I've got, Aaron and Hillary and there's been a lot of people that I've gone, hey, let's make art together, and Heather, who I just photographed, her and her beautiful family, she's a photographer, and so I really look at, Josie and I did the collaboration when she came out, and she taught me how to photograph with raw lighting at night with my black and white.
Okay.
And that was incredible. That just took me to just a whole other planet, and I just went wild with that.
Yeah.
So anytime I get the opportunity to learn or to experience different things or to have different opinions and different options, I think it just, it makes it a lot of fun.
How did you get so obsessed with photography?
Well, with my father.
Okay.
So growing up, my dad, Reed Scudder, he was an art professor at ASU and at SCC, and he was a three-dimensional design artist. But he also did photography. He bought, sold, made, traded guitars, mostly nationals, resonators. Yeah. And so he built a kiva in our backyard when I was a kid. He built our traditional adobe home in Pecos, or near Pecos, New Mexico, right above the Pecos River, middle of nowhere.
Wow.
So I grew up in Scottsdale and in South Scottsdale, and there was no North Scottsdale back then, by the way.
Okay.
And then in the mountains, we had an Airstream and an outhouse. And so I grew up, it was like feral Jules and then coming back to Scottsdale. But I was surrounded constantly by, artists, musicians, and one of his best friends, Bill Martin, who was a photography professor at SEC. He was a huge influence on me. All the black and white photographs that you see that I post of my dad or of me and my brother when we were younger that's his work.
Okay.
And so between, sometimes I don't know, like I'll find an image and I'll be like, oh, is this Bill's or was this Dad's? Sometimes I can't tell because they were doing the same kind of things. But now that I've got more experience, I can definitely tell the difference between a Bill Martin and a Reed Scudder, because Dad, there were certain things that he was really good at, but I would say that photography is one of them, but that wasn't his thing. That was Bill Martin's thing.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So you were young then when you really at least started noticing photography.
Yes.
And then what was the photograph that made you think, okay, you know what, I'm pretty good at this. Let me pursue this. Let me be obsessed with this.
I took a photograph of my wolf, Kanoa, and with my film. And my dad had come over and said, hey, that's really good. If you can get one good photograph out of 100, then you can call yourself a photographer. Mm-hmm. And I will never forget that statement. So it was kind of like this rush to beat time, but I never committed, It's like I was surrounded by these national guitars that my dad would say, pick it up and let's do Goodnight Irene, or we even had a family band. I just would never commit to any of it. Okay. I would go, yeah, okay, cool, I did this, and then I would move on to something else. So my father never actually got to see, he passed away before I actually committed to being a photographer.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh. So, and I love it when people say, he knows, or, there's just things that I just wish that I could be like, man, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
And get his insight. But when I miss that, I can reach out to his friends and Gary Drismala, Scott Jarson, Dave Sklar, all of his old friends, and just go, what do you think about this? And then they tell me, or they'll comment on Facebook or Instagram, and it makes me feel good. So.
Now, what was it about your dad's probably, well, not just maybe photography, but overall his artistic viewpoint, do you think that spilled on over to yours, if anything?
I think that as children, we want to be like our parents, or we end up being like our parents, whether we want to or not. Mm-hmm. So I got his eye. I mean, for Adobe, for landscape, for people. But then I started to make that into my own. So I think that his love of nature, his love of three-dimensional, some of his artwork is just out there. Like, I just go, God, what was he on when he did that? But I think that he was good at being photographed. Okay. That's what really, I would see an image of him and just go, I mean, I thought my dad was a rock star. Mm-hmm. He was so incredible in his 69 years of life that he did so much that anytime I saw an image, I thought he was Waylon Jennings. You know, like,
Yeah. Okay.
it was that the portraits became very important to me. And I think it was mostly the portraits that were taken of him by friends that that really turned me on to, doing portrait work and learning how. But the first time I ever did portraits was for an old friend, Jen, and she had asked me, she said, hey, I'm an esthetician, and I want you to photograph me. And I said, no, I just do these selfies, I can't do this. And she said, no, I totally believe in you. Let's go out to Papago and we'll do this. So a 2-hour shoot took me about 6 hours.
Okay.
I could not talk and take a picture at the same time. I mean, it was like if the makeup artist there if she had not been there, I would have been completely lost.
Okay.
It would not have gone
Yeah.
well. So it started with that. And once I saw that I could really see that person, that became so important to me. Mm-hmm. So it was my father's influence, but mostly of the images that were taken of him, to answer your question.
Were you also, so you were playing guitar and making photographs at an early age?
No, mostly my brother. I mean,
Okay.
he would try. My dad would try. I have several guitars that he bought me,
Mm-hmm.
and I would pick it up and I learned Goodnight Irene and then put it down.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
was like, oh, I could do this. But I wasn't consistent about it. So later on, when we had our family band, it was in my 20s, I sang and, a little bit of harmonica, a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah, it was constant with him, like art and music and that kind of thing. Like I don't know if you follow Mule Resonator guitars.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I had this conversation with Matt yesterday through a message, and he said something that was so profound to me. He said, it really it makes such a difference when people encourage you. It means so much, and it makes such a difference.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, and his stuff is very nostalgic for me because, I grew up around that sound. So to hear anything like that, to hear Slide, to, listen to Furry Lewis, Waylon Jennings. I mean, it's, Waylon Jennings rented my dad's guitar collection in the 80s.
Oh, wow.
And that was the biggest thing. And, it was, this is a good story. So they spent, I think my dad spent a month there with him and he recorded, with the guitars. And, I have a picture of the original collection that he actually borrowed or rented or used. I don't know. And my mom said that they were all there and they were partying and having a good time. And she said that they had humidifiers in the room because it was so dry here that it changed Waylon's voice. And she said, and then she has a voice like this, and she goes, and then as we're leaving, Waylon, dips me and kisses me. And I go, like, French kisses you? And she goes, well, yes. and I said, was Jessie there? And she said, yes. Like, it was no big deal. And I said, Jesus, Waylon kissed you? And she said, yes. And then he told me, I hope to know you, or I'll know you in another life, or I'll know you next time or something. But that photograph, he actually signed it and said, love you, Waylon. Mm-hmm. It's on my Instagram. And I just went, what, Mom? Like you totally made out with Waylon Jennings. Wow. Like, how cool is that? Yeah. Damn. And I said, was Dad pissed? And she said, oh yeah, he was mad as hell. And she goes, what was I going to say? It was Waylon,
Dad don't give a fuck who it was.
Yeah, he didn't care. So I love that story. And Dad said that Waylon called him Big Hoss the whole time.
Oh,
he was,
nice.
Yeah. And so my dad was about 5'7", so
okay,
so 5'8" on a good day, maybe 5'9". But yeah, that was. I love that story. So it was kind. And I said, where were John and I? And she said, at home with the babysitter. I just,
okay.
Oh man, So this happened in the 80s. I was born in 1977. So.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I have to ask, because of so many resonator guitars running around, is there a lot of blues music hitting? You mentioned Slide. You guys are also playing, obviously, more like, I don't consider, I guess Waylon Jennings is country western, but I mean I'm more of I call him more of a singer songwriter along the lines of a Willie Nelson sort of thing like that. Yeah. I don't like to associate those songwriters with the country music that we're listening to today.
Yeah, no, you can't. No, I totally agree. Dad was a big fan of Furry Lewis. He got to play with him, and he was a friend of his.
Wow.
So yeah, he was an old man.
Your dad recorded with other musicians too. Is he on record on any records or anything?
Nope.
Oh,
But
okay.
we have a video that my Aunt Renee made. Like, and it was like, 85 or something. They had just got a video player, a video recorder,
Uh-huh.
and so they recorded. My parents, wherever we went. That's why I think I thought he was a rock star. Wherever we went, my dad would put on a show. And he had like, a set of songs that he did. And it was mostly Bob Dylan, and he would do Waylon and, that kind of thing. And depending on his mood. But one session was recorded and I have it. And when he passed away, she had it transferred onto a DVD for us.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's fun to kind of go back, and he's, sort of tells the story of, how he learned this song, or, and he does a good impression of Bob Dylan.
So as a young child, you were hit to a very artistic lifestyle, it seems like.
Yes.
Yes. Waylon Jennings doesn't come to everyone's house.
No, well, he didn't come to our house. I think, but yes.
Talks to most people's parents.
Right.
And then, of course, your dad being an artist as well.
Yes.
Is your mom also an artist?
In her own way, she's a hairstylist, and she's been,
Oh,
she's for years and years, and she's got that down. She does, Yolanda makes her. My mother is, she's incredible. I think she always gave him the light, the spotlight, but he could never take it for very long with her. She's incredible. She's funny. She's beautiful. She'll dance in the middle of anywhere. She's just a lot of fun. So the two of them together, their energy was just incredible. So. And
then we were talking earlier from that. You've never really taken any formal lessons in photography.
That's
what
correct.
About any other sort of art? Well, I guess you don't need to if your dad's an artist, but as far as like going into college or going into high school, no real formal training for any sort of composition, visual arts, or anything like that, huh?
No, I had reached out to Bill Martin. So Dad had already passed away, and I reached out to him and said, I'd really like to sit down with you, and maybe I could take some, private classes from you. And he said to my mom at a dinner party, no, absolutely not. It will ruin her. Let her just do her thing. She's doing her thing, and she'll learn as she goes. And excuse me, and I have. I mean, I really, there's so much more, that I can learn from a camera, but I learned from friends, and, when I sat down with Bill, he taught me, about composition a little bit. And, in my mind, like even shooting in Joshua Tree this weekend, what looks good to me is what I photograph. It's not ever, I don't worry about those things, but afterwards I go, wow, that's great composition. I didn't even realize it, and I didn't notice that rock was in the middle up there because I'm paying attention to these other things over here.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I had to learn how to do was, if there was a cigarette on the ground, or somebody's hair was out of place, or, a tag was showing, I wasn't paying attention to all of those things when I first started. So I really had to learn how to do that.
Yeah, especially in a more commercial sense, I think. Those things matter, but,
yes,
right, whatever.
Right.
I've only met a couple people where they take the same approach to where they are natural at compositions. They can see things in a certain... And, you try to break it down, and then you try to explain to people what it is. And the most overly simplistic thing I can think about is this geometry, balance on some things, unbalanced for different emotions. But people throw out they're the rule of thirds, and there's the golden ratio, and then there's this, and then that. And, of course, those are all rules. But at the end of the day, some of us, some of you guys, because some of me, I learned it. Right. But some of you guys have that natural way of looking at things, and
thank you.
And I love it. And in certain aspects, I totally agree. Like, hey, don't take a lesson of this. Don't take, probably ruin you if you actually know the rules versus, you're already breaking them, sort of thing. Right. But as you stated before, you are still asking people for knowledge and asking people for information, and at the very least looking at other people's work to not necessarily compare, but you are you absorbing some of the things that you see technique wise, and hey, wonder how they did that. So,
yes, absolutely. When you talk about, when you're very technical, you are in your work, but then there's this wild side in your work that I've noticed, and I appreciate both. And when I go to set something up, I can fly by the seat of my pants. I can make it wild, or sometimes it needs to be tuned, and it needs to be finely tuned. And earlier when we were talking about when you have to kind of come back down from being so high tone when you reach that as a photographer, people are going to pay attention to what I want them to pay attention to in a photograph. I mean, geez, what, dude?
Yeah.
Oh God, if I could take back that statement, I would. But I think it's important to acknowledge when you have made mistakes or been wrong about things, and to learn each time. I think that I can go back to Josie Perez. That photo shoot was so important and so much fun for me, and all of them are. But I learned the most in that one, and I can still go back. And the more I learn how to edit, and the more I learn about lighting and raw lighting, I can go back and re-edit a photograph, and I go, of hers, from that day, and it looks totally different than when I did it that day, and I get like, photographing Heather, this most recent one in her family, I get so excited and I rush through, and this one is delicate. And I'm not really sure why, and it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, because I want to treat this like this rare little flower, and I kind of want it to bloom out of this, And I really got to play with my friend Kendra Baum. I did the collaboration with Hillary, and we got together and took Kendra and did this. That was the first time I did like a semi-nude that I showed. There's a lot of photography that I don't share. But that one with Kendra with the cowboy hat, and we kind of have the jacket, like you can see her breast, but it's not like the whole thing. And that was raw lighting, and I was sweating. I mean, I was working my ass off, because it was getting too dark. I did it in my spare room, which I really like that lighting in there. And I wanted it to be raw, but we have to be careful with that, because you have people that are very bold with raw, and then you have people that are like, oh, I don't want to see that much raw,
Yeah.
So there's that fine line. So I learn as I go, and with each person, each human that I photograph, I learn something, and I take that with me, and it's helped me along the way. Like my friend Brains, he is so much fun to photograph, but to get a hold of him, it's like wrangling. I don't even know what, so I have to catch him, and when I catch him, it's just like, whoa, it's just, I get blown away. And then I have friends that, Jeff and Laura, that just, they let me, go at it. Lindsay, I have just people that don't mind me being their paparazzi and letting me learn on them. So
how can is there a way that you think you can express to someone who doesn't understand how to take something away from each photography session or portrait session and internalize it and use it as something on another shoot, or just maybe as personal growth? Is there something that you can put into words to maybe explain to someone who doesn't know how to do that yet? Or how to reach that point, besides having magic powers?
I am kind of magical.
Yeah.
That's a really beautiful question. I think you have to be open. You just have to be open. You have to be open to all of it, to somebody not liking your image, to somebody loving your image, to critiquing yourself, to not being high tone. It's hard not to, to go shoot to the top, and then, don't be so cool, I'm going to call you a culo. Like that's always my thing. Like, don't shoot all the way up to where you're not open. I listen, I watch, as I'm photographing somebody, I can see what their beauty is. I can see if they're ugly inside. I can see if they're beautiful inside. I can see, if they tell me, like Heather said, I love bees. Okay, I have that now. But I could see something else in her. Right away when you open the door, after I photograph you, I will describe exactly how that went and what my feelings were on that. And I think that having the confidence to not only photograph somebody or something, but to have the courage to say how you feel about something, that is important. And I think a lot of people get away from that. We are, we're it's too much because of social media, or, who the fuck am I, or I'm going to go into these big stories. That's what I like about Lee Jeffries, is that he's not describing the image. He's describing the person in it. And I think that is so important. And in order to do that, I don't think that you have to be a writer. I'm not a writer, but it's how this person made me feel. It's how I felt right away, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent. You should be able to describe that. And I think that when you can make notes, on if you're dealing with a huge event and a whole bunch of people, you're obviously not going to be able to do something like that. But if you pick one person out of that event and make that important, I think that's how you learn about people and portraits, the people that you're photographing.
How long did it take you to get to that point, or is that something that you kind of already intuitively felt, or was there a specific point in time where something happened to where you came to this realization?
I think that intuitively, that is very natural for me. I'm Aquarius. Mm-hmm. It's very natural for me to just zero in on something and to feel something. I have a very dear friend who was pregnant and was told, that she was going to lose the baby. Oh. And so, I went over there to photograph her, and he was still alive, and it was really emotional. I mean, just thinking about it, is sad because it was horrific. And to be a part of that, it was an incredible experience because I could see her pain. And so I don't feel it. I don't know on that level, but it was so sad. And I think just picking up on vibes from people, I think that's like, I know when somebody doesn't want me to photograph them. Mm-hmm. I think that's important to pay attention to as well. But yeah, intuitively, I think that's really, and it's gotten stronger as the years have gone on that I've been photographing. Absolutely.
Now, do you work in projects, or do you like personal projects, or maybe even paid gigs? Do you work in projects at a time? Is there a certain theme that comes up that you want to accomplish, or are you?
Yeah, I did that. I had there's projects that I work on all the time. I agreed to a wedding in September, and I'm excited about that because it's going to be up north and it's going to be like a rad little thing. I usually don't do weddings, but that one I think will be a lot of fun. But, if my friends talk about something, like a friend of mine, he has his grandfather's saddle, and he told me this whole story, and I just thought, my God, I've got to photograph you with the saddle. And so I have my own personal little projects like that. But the biggest thing was the motorcycle culture. That was a big goal, and it wasn't at first. I didn't go in and go, I'm going to photograph guys on motorcycles. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to be that girl who didn't ride and didn't know anything about motorcycles. I don't want to ride. I like being on the back of a motorcycle, but I learned from Cool Breeze and Chad Funk and some other people in my life that have their choppers that they've built and taught me, and I was like, what's the difference between this and this and this? And then they sort of tested me on it so that I was able to, learn about that culture in order to move forward. And then I photographed for a motorcycle club. And that tested me on every level, but in a good way. It got rid of my fears. It was, normally I can move somebody. I can say, oh, I need you to move to the left. Well, I had one say to me, I ain't moving, and I'm not going to argue with that. So, yeah. But they shared these incredible their history and their stories with me that I have strong images of them. And this is stuff that I can't share with the public. And this is, and now I know what it's like to have a private collection, which I'm sure that, you're well aware of. So, facing my fears, putting myself out there, I had one that hated the way that I photographed his motorcycle, and I was like devastated, but now I can laugh about it because he was right. It was too dark. Okay. And he was right. And I did not photograph that motorcycle well. And doing a lot of research on how people photograph motorcycles and that. So I really got into it. So there was like 3.5 years. That was a project for me.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yes. And it was every weekend. It was, it just kept going and going. I mean, I was exhausted by the time it was done.
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. So
now, I'm going to have to ask because more or less this podcast has been a bit of a sausage fest. I'm trying to get more and more women involved.
Yeah.
But from your point of view, getting involved in something like a motorcycle club and a motorcycle project, how was there a level of intimidation for you that probably some dude doing it wouldn't have felt, or was it very inviting overall? The culture allowed you to
very inviting,
have access to it.
Very inviting, and it was just, hey, when can I get this photograph from you? And I was so honored that I just was like, oh my gosh, let's do this right now.
Yeah.
And it was, everybody was so nice, and they loved the images, the one, that was so funny. I just went, oh my God, I'm so sorry about the bike. But there was other people that, it's to me, the motorcycle culture, and there's the chopper scene, there's all these events, and you would think that it's all the same, and it's actually not. And so I had some clubs that were like, yeah, cool, post it. We don't care. I had other clubs that were like, no, this is a very private thing, which I totally respected and understood. There were chopper guys that, were cool with me posting, a bike, but don't post this part of it, or don't, because things are very private. I mean, it's like somebody coming into your house or your car, inside your car, and looking in your car and photographing it and posting it. That's kind of how I looked at it. And so it was I had to walk in there. I was myself. And I think that's, I have a friend, Laura, who always says that, just be yourself, because it is important in that culture to just, you don't want to be somebody else. You don't want to pretend. It's like being in somebody's house. Like, I'm in your house right now. I'm not going to be disrespectful at it. And I'm not going to, I smoke cigarettes. I'm not going to light up a cigarette right here and knowing that you're a non-smoker and you don't smoke in your house. And I'm not going to be disrespectful. And I think that that's the only rule really that they have. It's just like, just be cool and be respectful and understanding to, the way that they live. So
next time we'll do it in a smoking room for you.
Thank you. Well, actually, I'm going to quit smoking, and I'm putting this out there, which I actually just did. So on the day after my 43rd birthday, so my birthday's on February 3rd, I will be attempting to quit. I've never tried quitting.
Okay.
So
oh, really?
Yeah, I've never tried. So this is going to be the first time that
I'm curious as to. I mean, there's obvious reasons as to why one would want to quit smoking, but is there anything specific as to after so long you decided, you know what, I've had enough cigarettes?
You know what? I don't even feel that way. I love smoking. I'm good at smoking.
Yeah.
But I want to be healthy, and going through this spiritual journey that we were talking about earlier. This is my body. I need to take care of it. And I think for the most part I do all right, but I can do a hell of a lot better. And that's where the choice to attempt to quit smoking came. So
and the part that fascinates me a lot too as well is that I think you were, now I don't know too many women that photograph something as, let's just say, masculine as motorcycle culture.
Right.
Did you at all look before at any other motorcycle pictures and portraits of, if they existed? Because of course we're talking about a certain culture that is very private.
Yes.
Did you notice any other portrait work out there with all these guys in it that influenced you at all, or?
Yeah. I mean, there are. You can go anywhere, and from the '60s, and the '60s and '70s, and there's a couple people that I follow on Instagram that I just was blown away by, some of the work, but nothing that I wanted to be totally different.
Yeah.
I didn't want to copy. I didn't want to try to do the same thing. I have a really big thing with hands, and I like to me, hands tell me a lot about somebody, and I like to photograph hands. And so there was a lot of, some of these men make whips and handmade whips and leather work and that kind of thing. And it's really incredible. It's very intricate. And so watching them and watching their hands, that was the first. I actually asked a member, this was after a party, and he was making a whip, and I said, "Hey, can I photograph you?" And he said, I said, "Can I photograph your hands making, the whip?" And he said, "You want a what?" Looked at me like I was crazy. Mm-hmm. And I repeated myself, and he said, "Sure." But I had to get kind of kneel down and put my camera right in between his legs almost, because he was working like this,
Okay.
And so that was kind of but I did it, and it was I had the guts to do it. And that was, till this day, one of my favorite images.
Okay.
I mean, it's just beautiful with the rings. But I've been heavily influenced by, just all of you photographers that I know and I follow. It doesn't have to be about, the motorcycle culture. It could just be the way that you photographed a woman, or you photographed I'll zoom in and look, wow, her hands are incredible, or, wow, he really got this with, her hair, her shoulder, or, it's those kind of things that I have learned from. And as far as the motorcycle culture goes, anything that you look on, you can do Pinterest, you can do Google, but nobody specific. It was more just about, there's one shot that I never got, and I always wanted, was to lay down on the road and just to have my head just a little propped up and just have them ride, just flying by me. Yeah. I did get a lot of images riding from the back of a motorcycle.
Okay.
I've hung out the back of my convertible car. I've had other people drive it and just hung out of the back of it while they're riding, so that I could get those images.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been in the passenger seat where somebody's driving for me, and I'm like, get out of the way. I gotta, get this shot.
Wow.
One of my favorite photographs of Chad Funk was taken that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He was on the highway, and I just went, move out of my way, to Matt, who was driving, and just, just crawled on top of him while he's driving just to get that shot.
Wow.
So, yeah. So.
How did you come across that project?
Well,
I find that fascinating.
Thank you. Well, originally, before I met anybody, I had met, again, Chad Funk, and he has an incredible motorcycle. And I met him a few years before I met everybody else, but I had started, my ex-boyfriend, Joey, he had Soapy's Chopper Shop over on 24th Street and off of Thomas. And I started dating him. And so he was actually, his motorcycle was the first one I ever photographed. And it was, and then I photographed him a couple times. And there's one image that I took over of him on 24th and Camelback at the light that just, whoa. Down to even the flannel he's wearing. I'm not even into flannels. It was it was, his bike looked incredible. It was, the whole thing. And then after him, I ended up dating a club member, and for a different club, and he's the one that, I kind of made my own way. It was yes, he introduced me to some people, which I completely appreciated, but they had already seen my work, and I would put myself out there. I'd say, hey man, if you ever want me to photograph, and it was always just offering that. And then once I photographed the member with the whip, that just shot me. Other people wanted their photograph taken. And at first it was just about hands because it's a very private thing. But then I was able to photograph, charters. And
now,
that was an honor.
I think we hit on this a little bit before that. Now, you're not hitting these people up for money. You're not saying, hey, I'm going to give me some money and
Nope.
this is your personal project.
That's
and you
right.
essentially putting out good karma.
Yes.
And saying, let me do this for you.
Yes.
And then that opened up a whole world of...
Yes. And and I think it intimidated some people where I got away from, my regular portrait work.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of had to go, wait a minute, I'm still doing that. That's not, just because I'm doing this over here. And that's where I think the high tone came in, where it was, for me, where I had to go, whoa, calm down, girl. Like, bring it back. This is not just what you're doing, and you're still capable of doing all these other things. There's a project I still want to do. I've never photographed Bill Martin, and my dad's friend, the photographer, and Dave Sklar. I've photographed his other friends, and those are projects I still want to do. It's important to me. Yeah, it's nostalgic and it's history. I really want to photograph Matt with mule guitars.
Oh yeah. Me too.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'll step aside for that one.
No. I'll go.
We can go together.
I'll steal your shot.
Good one.
Yeah.
I like that you slipped that one in.
Now, this is I kind of want to ask this question, especially from someone like you, who seems to be very spiritual, very in tune, and you are not exactly, and this, I don't mean this in a backhanded compliment, but you're not bogged down by this extreme technical data of using the camera, which is, I think, a very complex tool, and it's just as complex as a guitar, as far as I'm concerned.
That's right.
How, now, is photography a spiritual outlet for you?
Yes.
And I think that, because I think it's very underestimated that people don't understand that it's not just gears. I think it's spiritual in a sense.
Yes.
And is that something that really flows? I know that looking at your images, that's something that I can see, that there's a spiritual from the wolves to the motorcycles to the portraits.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is that something that you really think about and you're cognizant about every single time? Is about just kind of absorbing and being more spiritual, and not necessarily artistic or wanting to be artistic, but very into expressing the spirituality?
Absolutely. When I photographed Gypsy, she runs a store. She owns and runs a store called Elements of Spirit downtown on Grand Avenue. She allowed me to photograph her. And that's another, photograph that nobody will ever see. Out of respect for her and her culture. And to photograph that it's hard not to get just totally sucked in by it, and then to respect it. And then to sort of tiptoe around what's happening during this time, but to really capture her essence, the healer, the warrior, really who she is. And women with me, and I love this, women, they get in front of me and there's this strength that I've, either I knew was there or I didn't know was there, but it comes out and I just go, there it is, man. You know what I mean? Like, here she is. And, but I think it's also difficult to then take that image and back it up. And not that people can't back up their images. It's just, when I put something out that's very strong or very sexual or not, or, showing any kind of strength, it's hard to be judged or to feel like you're being judged for that. but I think owning who you are, and that's what Gypsy does. She owns who she is, and well, pretty much everybody I photographed. But with Gypsy and the spiritual, that's what started my spiritual journey with photography. It was before that, but that's where I noticed it, where I went, wow, I'm seeing things that I never noticed before, and really just, with social media as a photographer, we have people that put everything out. Everything that they have is just out there. And I think that that's important too. But I also, I don't want to rip on that, but I also think it's important to have a private collection. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to really respect what people ask of you. Like, I want this image, but I'm going to have to trust you with this. And to be trusted with certain images like that that in itself has been spiritual for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's an important thing. And I have felt honor. I have felt, I felt honored, to be able to do that for people.
Yeah, it's a great point, because I've asked, I've had a couple conversations just this past week where singers, songwriters, hip-hop artists, and I asked, are there songs that you write that are specifically for you that you're never going to release?
Yeah.
A couple of them, yeah, and the conversations I've had before, well, yeah, I have personal songs I've written about my son or daughter or my wife that no one's ever going to hear. Right. These other artists are like, I guess I do have them. I write them about, no one's ever going to release those. Yeah. And some people are like, well, no, I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
And just to share this with you, I do have my own private collection as well.
I bet.
But a lot of the times, because music is my thing. Music photography is the whole reason I'm here. That's just my jam, and I love it. And sometimes when I'm, when I was shooting back, I used to shoot a lot when I first started out.
Yeah.
And some songs where I shot, I'd just put my camera down.
Yeah.
And my buddies are all, well, why aren't you taking pictures? Isn't this, what you do? And my reply was, sometimes some songs are just for me.
Good for you. I love that.
And it's just like, because while you do absorb some spirituality through the lens, there's still that little barrier in front of you. So you remove it and you just allow this music to hit you, and you take it. And then because that's the whole reason I was there in the first place, know, so.
I love the way you broke that down, because I did not. I did not. Yeah, and that's it's beautiful. And that is exactly what the spirituality is of that. You said it beautifully.
Yeah, I said, sometimes some stuff is just for you.
Yes, yes, and I think that's important. I think that I still find stuff at my dad's that I go, I've never even, was this his? I never even knew, because I think that there were some very private things. So. Yeah, I think that the spirituality part of it has been intense for me, but it's also been really beautiful for me, because I'm feeling, I'm seeing, I'm learning, which has humbled me out. It's, I had a situation where it just knocked me completely. Just like I said, it was like somebody clipped me from the back, and I went, holy shit, oh, I don't know all the answers. I don't know, everything. So that's kind of hard for Aquarius. We definitely think we know things. So. Yeah.
Well, it happens to some of us too over here. Leos, I guess.
Oh yes. Yeah. Leo the lion. Absolutely.
Now, again, I don't get to speak to as many women photographers as I'd like. And I think, unfortunately, I would love to, we were talking a little bit before about some of the things that you have encountered I'm not sure that it was because they're dudes.
Right.
But they didn't help that they were. Yeah. And they were just overall not cool.
Right.
How much of that have you had to deal with? Because I assume it's more than what I've had to deal with as a dude.
Right. Just a few times.
And how do you deal with that?
Well, I've ended a friendship over it. And I don't think I would have changed my reaction to those things, because that's how I felt at the time. And I was out there, working my ass off. I was running my ass. And if somebody was intentionally doing something or unintentionally doing something, either way, I'm a pretty direct person. So if I'm direct and I say, hey man, I didn't like that you did this. And they say, well, you misunderstood. No, I didn't fucking misunderstand anything. That's insulting to me.
Yeah.
And I think that, it just I called them out on it, whether right, wrong, or indifferent. But usually I would say 99% of the time when I'm wrong, I say I'm wrong. I didn't feel wrong about that. So I think that for women, not to be intimidated, not to be, to feel that way. You're going to have it. You're going to have competition, whether it's a male or female or whatever. It's always going to be like that. But I think the hardest one for me was being out at the racetrack and just being told, like, I don't have a place there. And I went, what? Well, there's all these other people standing here. Why can't I stand here? And then it was, kind of looking at my camera like I was, it was like insulting, and I thought, hey man, I don't know what I'm doing. But the first shot I caught a Nitro Harley, going, 204 seconds. And I caught that fucking shot. Get out of my way. That's how I felt, with my little tiny camera.
Yeah.
So it was, I think having a sense of humor, I think being able to vent about it, I think having your friends say, yeah, agree with you, or, I have a set of friends they'll call me on my shit.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes. They will. And I normally don't like to hear that. So, but they're not afraid to tell me. And I think that it's important to have both sides of the story. I think it's important to, I reached out to Josie Perez a few times, just like, oh, this person did this to me. And, I can't believe this happened. And she was like, you're responsible. You're responsible for, and was harsh on me, but not in a mean way, just was very direct. Like, hey, name your price, stick to it. If something changes in a photo shoot, then stop the photo shoot and say, okay, well, now we're talking this price. And now we're talking, this is a whole other photo shoot, because I was just like, oh yeah, I can do all of this in 4 hours, or I can add this and it'll be fine. And then I was working twice as hard for the same amount of money that I had agreed to begin with.
Yeah.
So that was really good for me to have Josie say, understand what you're doing when you walk into a photo shoot, understand who you're dealing with and what's, be aware, be self-aware and taking responsibility. So when I step back and I look at, yes, it was hurtful for me out at the racetrack, but now when I look back at it, who did I think I was? I walked out there where there were professional photographers that have earned their spots to be there and for years. And then here I come and I'm just like, oh, I'm just going to jump right, in between, which I would never treat another photographer like that. I would be like, come on, let me put you underneath my wing. And, you probably don't want to stand here, or this is kind of the way that we do things. I wish that, if I could change that situation, it would be that I wish that they had just said to me, instead of insulting me or making fun of me or being assholes to me. But I've never been the type of woman to be afraid to, to walk into any situation. If I'm supposed to be doing something, I'm going to do it, and but I think that, if you stick to a certain type of, photography, like, if you only photograph babies, like that, babies scare me more than anything. I mean, my God, I get like sweaty. I'm like, oh my God, this is so intense. But I think just being a respectful photographer, there are photographers, up north that Nikki is just incredible. And I would never step on her toes. It's and vice versa. But there are a lot of people that would. And I don't believe in that. I think that, just having a lot of respect, whether it's a woman or a man. She's part of the whole chopper scene. And
okay.
Yeah. And so for me to go up there and I'm like photographing, and she's always like, oh my God, I love your photographs. And she's so sweet to me, but it's important. It's important to just be respectful, I think, of your fellow photographers and whether it's men or women. But I think that men have, I had one that, was just like, oh, you should do this and you should shoot with this. And I thought, well, I didn't realize I had a problem with my Nikon camera.
Yeah, there's
So
it's. Well, I'll tell you about it. If we'll take a break, I'll go.
Okay, cool.
I'll tell you about how I think I've dealt with this. I'll run it past you and
Oh, I'd
see
love that.
what you think about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Back
All right.
on.
Okay.
All right. So I think we left off real quick just so that jog a little bit of memory. A gentleman who was overall being, let's just say, very assertive with what kind of gear you should use.
Yes.
And we were talking about how, during our break, how that doesn't matter.
No.
How it's basically a tool. It doesn't matter if you're Canon or Nikon.
That's right.
A hammer's a hammer.
Yes.
Whether it's
I
a
agree.
Husky or Craftsman,
That's right.
a wrench is a wrench.
That's right.
Okay, guys, you dorks out there, I understand one has a lifetime warranty and one doesn't, but okay, I get it.
Exactly. But also, I was so open to that. I'm open all the time for learning and like I told you originally, I didn't start calling myself a photographer until like this year, and I think it's funny, my Instagram name, the Julie actually comes from when I was little. My mom said I was about 3 or 4 and I learned how to write my name, but I wrote it the Julie. And
Wow.
so she's got it somewhere and I can't wait to find it so that I can post that. Like that's where that came from. It's not like I'm going, oh, I'm
Yeah.
the Julie.
I
You know
think-
what I mean? So
I think that's very Mexican.
yeah, totally.
And we haven't
That's
gotten into it because
La Julia.
like,
That's yes.
and
yes.
that's how we talk about each other. It's always the.
The, yeah.
The.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's
This
like-
guy that I recently dated said, what's with all the thes? The land in New Mexico, the fox, my
Yeah.
dog, and then the Julie. And I was like, I don't know. It's just the way it is.
Yeah,
So,
pretty funny.
yeah, that was kind of funny. But
Now, since we just brought that up here real quick, and we haven't talked about how you have actually, you're probably only you're exactly the third person I've ever met, Irish Mexican.
yes. Yeah. English
And
and a little bit of Scottish. Yeah.
English. Oh, okay. We got
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
UK-ish
Oh, yes.
and
yes.
Mexican.
Yes.
How has that helped shaped your creative process at all? you think?
Oh, big time Frida Kahlo. My father and mother. My mother is a very big fan of Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera, and she had a couple of their prints, on the walls growing up, and that was a big influence on me. And what I liked about any of the folk art, Day of the Dead, that wasn't scary to me, anything religious. Any of the saints, the Catholic religion, my God, that's just that imagery just blew me away. And it's intertwined with what's happened in New Mexico and even in the ruins and, the way that my father photographed, things. That was a heavy influence. And it's so funny because my father really never talked about his side of the family. I had to learn all that on my own.
Okay.
And which I've recently been doing. And so my mom's side of the family, I think that there was it didn't matter whose house I went into. There was some sort of folk art or we have a lot of artists in our family. My cousin Monica, I have cousins they're brothers and sisters, and they all play guitar, and they've been doing that since they were in high school. My Tio Güero, their dad and their mom, my Aunt Stella, they're really big in the Catholic Church in Buckeye, Arizona, and he was the barber. And actually, his barber, like his station, is in the Buckeye Museum now.
What?
But I remember going to their house and seeing folk art, and I was just constantly around. Whether it was my dad's, it was his friends that influenced me, or it was the Mexican side of the art in music. And I thought everybody grew up like that, like.
Yeah.
I just realized the other day that not everybody sees how I see.
Yeah. Pretty weird, huh?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
weird. So that I think I was influenced on all sides. But my mom, Frida, even to talk about Frida Kahlo was emotional for me. Like I I sometimes think, would Frida Kahlo even like me?
Okay.
Would she just be like, get the fuck out of here? Or would we, sit down and, jam on some cigarettes and, a bottle of whiskey? I'm not sure. I would hope. But I liked how real she was. I liked how raw. I liked that she really put herself out there. And, my girlfriend, the one that I discussed earlier that lost her baby, I almost compared that to when Frida had her miscarriage and painted it, and for my girlfriend, and I've never even said this to her, to really put yourself out there for that emotional part of it and to share that experience with people. It was so touching, and it was, I think, groundbreaking for other women as well, because they went, well, I've been there, God, I have somebody I can relate to. And so with I think women, we like to be influenced. We like to, be able to have some sort of blanket where you just go, man, I can really relate to that. And it's important. I think it is a more sensitive, thing to do. But for me, if I had to choose, the ethnic, that it would be Frida Kahlo. That was my biggest, I'm still to this day just blown away by her. And, my dad, after the movie came out with Selma Hayek, he said, well, God, Selma Hayek was much more prettier than Frida. But I didn't think so. I disagree with that statement, because Frida was totally herself, and all the things, all the obstacles that she was given. And, I don't think she handled all of it totally well, but she did with what she had. And to have that goal, to have, a show in Mexico City, it was her goal, and she did it. And she got to go on her deathbed, basically. I mean, they carried her on that bed, and how incredible that she finally made it. And I think that's, any of us that are I think people misunderstand artists. It's really hard to put yourself out there. It takes a lot of courage. And, you've got some people that like it, some people that don't. And I don't think you have to have thick skin. I don't think that you can't be sensitive. But there is that fine line where, there was a time when everything was getting to me, and I was like, oh, this person did this. And, as I've grown, as I've evolved, I don't even pay attention to that kind of stuff now. And it's, but it's all been this great way to evolve, for myself. That's really helped me evolve, is to go through each of those experiences.
Yeah.
So, and, but yeah, my mom, and you asked me earlier if my mom was an artist. She is in her own way. My father just sort of took over, like he took over every situation, but Yolanda always had her own spot. Yeah, she always did. And she's made necklaces. She's made Frida Kahlo necklaces. Like, I mean, they'd be heavy to wear, but
oh, wow.
She's made necklaces, and she's, she's a healer. She deals with women all day long. She's gonna kill me, but sorry, Mom. She's 76 years old, and she's, she works, 6 days a week. And she's, and then when she's not doing that, she's walking 5 miles.
Slow down, Mom.
Chihuahua.
Wow.
And then she, I mean, she's just going. And so there's no looking like shit around Yolanda. Everybody knows that. Anybody who's listening to this knows my mom knows, like, don't come over in your pajamas. Like, you better brush your hair, So, and I admire that about her. I think that, she grew up in Buckeye, and then, my Nana and Tata moved to Norwalk, California. She went on to Berkeley, and that's where she met my dad. Her sisters were there. And then Dad was part of the San Francisco Oracle, and that was like a New Times magazine, but, for the 60s, during that time with, Allen Ginsberg. And,
yeah, of course Dad would be in Berkeley, right?
Man, where wasn't he?
Yeah.
So yeah.
So speaking about evolving.
Yeah.
You had what maybe a lot of people call a real job.
Yes.
In quotes.
Yes. 23-year career.
23-year career.
Yeah.
And then one day.
I was pretty much like that. I was like, oh, I gotta go.
Yeah.
I was changing, and I was going through something that I couldn't really figure out at the time. And I've been telling my friends, I just want to work like a retail job. I don't want a responsibility. Like, I've always gone, go, go, go. I bought my first house when I was, my only house at 2000 in 2004. And, I've taken care of it. It's a lot of responsibility. And I always had I took pride in that. I took pride in, I did this and I'm capable of this. And then with this shedding of my skin, like we were talking about, I went, I don't really want to do that anymore. I just want to have some time for me and healing. And when you begin to heal, you start to change and you start to humble out and just go, just wasn't me anymore. And I was shopping at one of my favorite stores, Earthbound Trading Company, which is like a bohemian store. It's super rad. And one of the girls, they were I heard them talking about hiring somebody, and I said, "Are you hiring?" And she said, "Yeah." And I felt like, she said, "Oh my God, you remind me of Stevie Nicks." And I thought, "Oh my God, can I take you with me?
Yeah.
You just go everywhere with me." And I was super impressed by that. But I felt like I was kind of confused. I said, "Well, should I give you my resume?" And she said, "Well, just fill out this application." Well, I haven't filled out an application since I was like 15. So I went, "Oh," and I filled out the application. I went through 3 interviews, and I work part-time there now. And it's a lot different for me, but I love the girls that work there. I love going to work.
Nice.
And it's not that I didn't love the firm. I had a very close relationship with my boss and my coworkers. And I, to this day, I love them. My boss, the attorney gave me, I think one of the best references I've ever had. Like he made my now manager emotional. Like she was just blown away. She said, "My God, I can't believe this reference." And I respect all that, but it just wasn't, it wasn't me anymore. And I think I think we live up to other people's expectations. Like when we're in our 20s and then in our 30s, we're kind of like, well, I don't know what I want to be doing here. And I'm literally doing exactly what I want to be doing, but not without a lot of hard work. This is the time where I'm really focusing on healing. And when I say healing, we all have these little boxes that we've stored for a million years. And once you start to move them, you start to feel better. And then all of a sudden you're happy.
Yeah.
And you go, "Holy shit, this is what this feels like." And I didn't consider myself unhappy before, but I made a lot of mistakes along the way. I have made wrong turns. I have not done the things that I should be doing. But it also led me to a really cool spot where I could make these decisions to, I want to buy a tiny house. My brother and he invited me and took me, and we got to, view these at that expo at the state fair a couple weeks ago. And it became real. Like I thought, man, I could totally live like this, I want to be off the grid, but not too off the grid.
Yeah.
I'm not like, the hills have eyes, but I don't think Arizona is the place for me anymore.
Okay.
And
right.
I really, really, really loved the country in Tennessee.
Okay.
Yeah, I got to spend. So after I quit my career, I went to Tennessee and I really got to know it over there, and it was incredible. And I actually found some ancestors that from my father's side that lived there, and the neighbor across the street. I have these incredible letters that were written between family members on my dad's side of the family in the 17 and 1800s. And they're beautiful, like the handwriting, the way that they spoke to each other. And so I was outside having a conversation with my best friend Meredith's mom, and I said, "Jesse Crouch." And she said, "Jesse Crouch?" She said, "That's Chuck from across the street." And sure as shit, we called Chuck over, and Chuck, "Yep, that's my cousin." This whole time, like I've been there for 2 months and had no idea. And then the old country road that I love that we came down is named after the Crouches, and they were a family member of mine. And then there was this old, about 100-year-old farmhouse, and I had said to Mirror on one of our drives in or out, "I got to photograph that house." Well, it just so happens that I was related to the woman that built it, Minty Gresham Tucker.
Wow.
Yeah, so it kind of was really magical for me. It was
Yeah.
weird. Yeah, it was pretty cool. So, but I like that, and I liked, the country. I like the farmhouses. I think they're really incredible. But the tiny house thing, I think that's gonna be my gig. But
Out there, I don't know. Tennessee, I know Memphis or Nashville.
it's close to Nashville, so
Okay.
it's in Manchester. So it's Summitville. So you're at the foothills.
Mhm.
You're near the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, there's it seems like there's this photographer that I follow. They got a podcast too, and there's a really nice small town somewhere out there that still has, it looks like it's still way back in the day.
Yeah,
and it looks amazing. Well kept sort of town
Yeah.
and things like that.
Yeah, it has a lot of character.
Yeah.
It has, and there's a lot of bugs. A lot of bugs.
Ooh, yeah.
The caterpillars. Those caterpillars are nasty little things. Yeah, I had a couple sting me on my neck.
What?
Yeah, they fall. They have these great big nests in the trees, and Meredith had a fox that came to visit, became the resident fox, and yeah, I saw all kinds of crazy things out there. It was really incredible.
Okay.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
But again, you no regrets leaving the job. You
No.
were you really nervous about one day just going in there and going, hey, basically I'm done here? Or I mean, how long was the process between because one of the things I like to preach on this is that you can always fall back on a lot of things that you already know a lot about, and it's just not that big a deal. I in my opinion, of course people have responsibilities, and of course people can't but there's I think there's a window where people can take a leap to try something.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah.
It's definitely scary, and especially for me, like I claim the wolf, but I'm like a cat. I don't do well with change, Like
Okay.
that was kind of it was about a year. I had started to talk about, like I had a couple friends that just were like, to be realistic here, you cannot do this. And I just thought, yeah, I can. I made this investment with my house. I would have to move in with my mom, which I've done. And at 40, almost 43 years old, it's pretty difficult to do. But that's a stepping stone. I don't feel bad about it. I feel like I have to get my house fixed. I have to pack it up. I have to get, a couple things fixed before I put it on the market, and which is happening. And I was diagnosed with Graves' disease. And Graves' disease is hyperthyroid, so it makes you real hyper. And then I did radiation. I had like three options, like one to kill my liver by taking medication every day for the rest of my life, doing radiation and killing the thyroid inside of me, or removing it. And I'm just not a big, unless I have to have surgery, I don't really want to. So I chose radiation, and then I recently got fibromyalgia. And so once you have one autoimmune, it kind of like, they kind of show up. And no problem. So the fibromyalgia, that flares up when I get upset. And
oh, really?
Yeah. And when I say a flare up, like, it's like, to describe the pain for me, it's on my right foot on the top and on like the right side. And it just feels like somebody's taking a hot brand and just kind of going,
ooh,
but only for a minute. And you kind of just got to get through it. And so I'll kind of limp, it takes me a minute. And, my friends that I just went to Joshua Tree with were, oh God, they had the best jokes. They had all kinds of little nicknames for me, but which I loved, because neither one of those I've allowed to stop me from doing anything. However, having the high stress job that I had, we had a client that, it was emailing me at 4 a.m. My job just never stopped. Everybody else there could go on except for my boss, could go on a 2-week vacation and be away. I could only really go to New Mexico because we still have the land there, and I would go for 3 days, but I could never really escape it. So
wow,
yeah. So those 3.5 years of hardcore photography that I did, and all those photo shoots, thank God I did it during that time, because I don't think I would be able to do that now without seriously injuring myself. And so I just sort of work with it. I go, okay, so I gave up my career because my body just couldn't handle that anymore. And mentally, I think that people say you have a midlife crisis, in your 40s, or you have a nervous breakdown. There was something like that happened to me where I really just lost all touch of everything. And I just went, God, I can't stand anything. I don't know what I'm doing, and it was really an easy decision for me to make when it was time. But it was about a year that I had been talking about. Like I started training my boss's son, and I didn't really want to tell him, I'm training you for my positions here. You're going to be doing this. I just showed him the way, and I have all the faith that he's doing an amazing job. And I just talked to my boss from the law firm the other day, and we're going to do lunch next month.
Okay.
So yeah,
nice.
So it's not. He's been a big supporter of this change for me, and I think it was time for all of us. I think it's okay to move on.
Move on, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, has your creative process, or maybe even your spirituality, grown since you've left that job?
Yes.
Is it about the same, or do you really feel maybe a weight off your shoulders somehow?
Absolutely. I think that when we're holding on to something, and it could be the other way around. Like if somebody quits talking to me, other doors might open for them, doors that they didn't expect. When you have that kind of energy around you, I'm a big believer in this. You can become stagnant, stale. You're just like stuck in this thing, and you gotta lose things once in a while, and that's okay to do. And you gotta move on from people. It doesn't always have to be, like I've had toxic relationships. I've been toxic for that person. It's not always somebody being toxic for me. And I think that, you kind of just go through people. And sometimes, you have people that are in your life for a lifetime. I've my other best friend, Lindsay, I've known her since we were 4 years old. We've been through a lot of shit together, but, and we live totally separate lives, but we have, a lot of things in common too. But there's people that I've met that I've let go of, and that I've known for 20 or 30 years too, that I've let go of, because you have to, we can't stay the same. Like, yes, I can say that I'm going to do this and be in this legal career for, 50 years of my life. Well, I don't have to do that, but I have to change my lifestyle. So in order to do that, I have to sell my house. I have to live, for what I can afford. I was making this much, and I was, boom, I had this great setup at this little house downtown that I bought. And, but now it's different. I can't afford how I was living before. And when I left for Tennessee, I packed what was important for me in that little car out there. And,
you drove out there?
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, I go back to my house downtown now, and I just sort of turn around and go, excuse me, do I want this anymore? I'm giving away most of my stuff because I don't need it anymore. And I don't want to come off like, oh, I'm totally detached from material things, because that's not true. But I've learned that in order to open, you got to let go. You have to release. You have to, you have to, if that stool stays there for 3 years, as soon as you move it, all of a sudden you have all this room that you didn't know you had.
Yeah.
But it was convenient for it to stay there for that long, correct?
Yeah.
So that's how I've always, I've always lived like that. I've got pieces of the lightning tree. We call it the lightning tree in New Mexico. It's on the edge of the mesa on our land, and it's this giant tree. I've got pieces of the lightning tree I've been carrying around since I was 13.
Okay.
Come on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Let it go. So
Yeah.
and I'm learning how to do that. And I feel like, I was like, I had seen Gypsy, and we were having this conversation the other day, and I just said, sorry, I just got to this planet. I just got here to understand what you're talking about now, or, what you're trying to teach me. And I really hear what people say, even when people think I'm not listening. Mom. I hear it, and it resonates with me later on, and it's the little things now where I just go, wow,
It's like you just remind me. Eddie Vedder's got this line in one of his songs. It's not the world that saved you; it's all the shit that you save.
Yes.
And you
Yes.
just got to learn how to let go a lot of these things.
You do. You have to learn how to let go. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's, and I think that that's how you evolve. I think that
Yeah.
that's how you, begin to heal. And I didn't realize I required so much healing. Man, I thought I was like, had all the answers, knew what was going on. You know?
Yeah.
I didn't have any issues. I did. And I
Mm-hmm.
do. And those are things that I'm working on. Like I've pretty much promised myself that, I don't want to get into a relationship. I'm not sharing energies right now.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I think that even sexually, when you're intimate with somebody, you take on their energies.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to be real careful on who you're sharing your energy with. It's not just whether or not you're going to get hurt, whether or not, this or that or whatever, could affect you. It is also about what you're taking in from them. And it's not like I also don't want to say I just want to be around happy people, because I love complex people.
Mm-hmm.
I love, just out there people. But I've learned that, it's different for me when I post something on, with regard to my photography now. It doesn't, I don't go back and look at how many likes I have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, if somebody makes a comment and I find it rude, or it's, it's a little dig, or it's passive aggressive. I hope, as far as I've come, that it hasn't happened to me lately, but I would hope that I could just, it's not about me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Big
yeah.
world, little Julie, the Julie.
Little the Julie.
Yeah.
Now, with all this moving forward, is there a particular project that you want to attack now, or that you see that you would want to finish or start?
Yeah, I really want to photograph Bill Martin and Dave Sklar. That's one thing that Dave Sklar is like a pirate. Oh my God, he's so cool, and he's they're in their 70s, and Dave Sklar's like, hey man, he's just like, oh God, and he wears a leather jacket. It was like so cool. And there is the way I photographed Gypsy. I love the way I photographed her, but there's also this very high priestess magical side to her that I would like to show.
Okay.
So that's something that I had, discussed with her there. I'd like to revisit, my cowboy friend Mary, and Amy. She's an author, and I would like to revisit them now that I see them in a different light. I feel like I've got a different set of eyes now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to revisit, those things. And I think it just all comes with time. I really don't, at some point I do want to do a coffee table book. I'm not really sure what that looks like, but just of all the work, and I really think it's important that, I share the little stories, about what I learned, being around, people that don't think they matter when they do.
Yeah.
They don't see themselves, and I'm like, I see you.
Mm-hmm.
I see you from across the room.
Yeah.
I really enjoy working with Josie. I really enjoy working with Hillary.
Mm-hmm.
And I have had a lot of fun. Just, everybody that's allowed me to be inside them, around them, on top of them with my camera. I just appreciate that so much, because it's, what an honor I was granted. And with each one trusting me, I think you really, you and I were discussing that about, women especially, and being a male photographer. I've always respected your work, because it's not just one thing. You have a variety of things going on, and people and humans. And
Thank you.
Yes. And I respect that. And I, from day one, I've always followed you, and I like that. I think that's important. And I think just continuing to learn from my fellow photographers, and the research that I'm doing, and maybe getting back to film. And I do want to work with printing, like we discussed, and because I'm really horrible at it. And
oh yeah, me too.
yeah, and I feel like,
Yeah.
oh my God, you want what size? I don't, you want what dimensions? Like what?
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what that is. It's so funny because as soon as something goes technical, I just go, what?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I have a hard time with that, but I don't, because it's not something that I was interested in. Now
Yeah.
I think it's important to, especially if I'm going to do a coffee table book, you know, learning how to, just learning all of it.
What about an art show, or maybe even just a small exhibit somewhere? You ever think about doing something like that?
You know, I actually, Richie, one of my other ex-boyfriends. God. He is a photographer. He's an artist. He's very well known downtown. He had asked me, he actually ran Third Space, and did that whole thing, and asked me if I wanted to bring some of my photography in there, and I didn't have the guts to do it. You know, Aaron, another friend, had suggested, you know, come on, just do it in the vintage store, and, you know, throw some artwork in here. I would love to do something like that now. And, you know, there are images that I have that I would like to get permission, you know, from some of the people that I photographed, to say, hey, you know, do you mind if I do this, if I honor it in the way that you want it, you know? And, you know, we can discuss this collaboration of showing these pieces, because I think it's important.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So, and I have no problem, you know, asking, and it's okay if they say no. You know, I sort of go into a photo shoot knowing that not every image is okay for the public. Sometimes stuff is real personal, and that's okay with me.
Yeah.
I respect that.
Right on.
So, yeah.
Any plans on jumping into film anytime soon, you think? Or
I think so.
Not that I'm trying to convert everybody to film.
You need to use this.
Yeah.
No, you know.
Yeah, you need to use
this. But you know what? No, and I wouldn't take it that way at all. And I think that you are a film photographer that I absolutely hold, you know, in the utmost respect. There's some that I do not. But you, I think it's important that film stay alive, and I think it's important for every photographer to work with film. I didn't do it enough. That's how I started, but I didn't do it enough to even remember, you know, how the process actually, you know, goes. I would like to. I would like to challenge myself in that way. You know, when I told you on this Nikon that has tape on the bottom of it. I was super stoned one night, and this was years ago, and I was fucking around with my camera, and I created a black and white filter, and so I can just, you know, click right to that, and it's all black and white, and I love it. So that's why I've got tape on it. I can never lose this camera, my God, because I don't remember how I did it, but doing the black and white editing and that kind of thing, I would love to do that. You know, I would love to do that in a dark room. I'd love to really push my limits. So yeah, and now I just have all this time that I can do that. So yeah, I would, you know, I don't want to go take a class. You know, I mean, when you were talking about community stuff, like, I would rather collaborate with you or pay you to teach me, you know, to learn these things. And I think that, you know, like, when we were talking about somebody suggesting what kind of camera I should use, it was offensive in the sense that, well, what's wrong with the one I'm using now? Did I complain about it? I didn't say anything. I just, you know, so when somebody suggests something to me, I'm totally open to that. And I think that film is important, because it's just so real.
Yeah.
So, and not that digital isn't, but it's just a lot different.
Well, there is this thing that I am going to be experimenting on, combining both digital and film, to where I'm going to start making digital negatives to be printed in a dark room.
Wow.
And that is something that I've done a couple of things on them. My last art show, a lot of it was like that.
Yeah.
And I'm really, there's something that I'm going to pursue and start making platinum palladium prints.
Wow.
And that's another rabbit hole that I need to learn. That's a big learning curve too. But that's a way of combining we were just talking outside.
Yeah.
All these things, they're just fucking tools, man.
Yes.
They're not, one's not better than the other.
No.
And
no.
It's just something to learn how to create and express yourself. And
it is. And whatever works for you. Like I edit from my phone, literally from my phone. I email an image to myself and I edit. And I didn't like Lightroom, you know. I've never tried Photoshop, so I don't know, you know. And that's like another thing is that when you're doing these photographs for people, if you have, it's somebody who's, you know, like if you shoot a photographer, then they know what you're capable of doing, what you're not. But there's this unrealistic expectation from certain people where I just go, you want me to what? You know what I mean? Like I can't, I wouldn't even know how to do that. And I think that, you know, I've taught a lot of friends and customers or clients, you know, stand like this, or, you know, like the hand on the hip thing always cracks me up. I just go, get that hand off that hip, you know, don't tilt your head. Don't do that, you know, but it's always funny because, you know, that's the first thing I want to do. And if somebody turns that camera around on me, holy shit. I'm like, I don't know what to do with my hands. But as photographers, I think you'll agree, we get sort of lost. Nobody photographs us. So that's how, I forget who said this, and it's a quote, and I apologize for not remembering, but they said, that's how the artist gets, or that's how the photographer earns its spot in a photo, is by a selfie, you know? And so, and we were talking about that earlier too. You know, selfies, I kind of did this like scientific, I'm going to call it scientific because it sounds funny and cool. But, you know, I had called my brother and I said, you know, dude, okay, so let's see how many likes I get on the selfie. Let's see how many likes I get with my dog. And let's see how many likes I get on this really rad image that I worked my ass off on. Like the fox totally won, you know, like, and I just went, which is rad because I'm glad that people love the fox. But it really hit me how social media is and that it's hard. It is so hard not to be like, well, how the fuck did they get to go to Hawaii? How the fuck did, you know, it's so hard for us not to feel jealous or insecure or, you know, competitive. And, you know, even with our own friends and family, and that, you know, well, how come Julie always takes, you know, all these fucking great pictures? Well, first of all, everybody knows, don't just take one selfie, man. Take 30.
Yeah.
and don't post right away. We have this, if I had to give advice, not that anybody's asking me, but when you're out and you want to show that you're out and you're having fun. Like I was a hypocrite. I'm being a hypocrite right now because I did this in Joshua Tree where I took these photos, but I was like so excited about them. And I hadn't been excited, you know, in my own personal life like that in a while. And I posted them right away, you know. Normally I'll wait a few days, like even with selfies, it'll be a week later, or, you know, I try to enjoy the moment and be present about, you know, what we're doing because, and then when somebody posts their entire vacation, I love that. I love going through the photos and I think it's great, but then you're on, you know, image number 58 and you're like, fuck, okay, that's enough of that trip, you know, but I also don't want to be that judgmental person on Facebook or in any kind of social media form, because I think it's important that everybody does exactly what they want to do on their own shit. Yeah. And that people, if you want to over edit, if you want to do it raw, if you want to do it film, if you want to do it digital, do whatever the fuck you want to do. Yeah. And don't worry about what other people are saying or doing because... Amen. Yeah, it's hard.
And if you don't like it, fucking keep swiping.
Yeah. And if you don't like it, then there's the fucking door. Yeah. I mean, who cares? Who cares if I, you know, post a selfie or I'm posting this or posting that? And I think I had... posted this giant thing on that. I call it outbursts on Facebook. I had it like so because somebody I noticed was like, oh, you know, quit making your face, you know, so soft and you know, sometimes when you use the camera and depending on the lighting, you might just get that effect just because. Yes. It's not because you put on a beauty camera. It's not because, you know, people don't understand that, and I think that people that are not into photography probably shouldn't talk about it. Just like I'm not talking about, you know, being, in the military, or, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know anything about that. So I think that it's important that we don't rip on other people. Like I said, when I kind of made fun of, somebody who posts like 1 million of their family vacation, I still love that. I respect that. And if it's my choice to get off at number 58, and go, okay, well, I've seen enough of your vacation. But I think that if you're like, an old friend from the firm, actually, she just went to Hawaii, and man, did she take her time with those images. Peggy, those were incredible. They were, and she's not a photographer, but she is. And I think she really realized that this trip, and I haven't talked to her. Like, I think that she probably went, holy shit, like I see it, and I was really proud of her. I think that it's, important to encourage, going.
Yeah, you just triggered a memory for me that happened back in my MySpace days.
Yeah, good old MySpace.
Yeah, there was a young lady from the South.
Yeah.
Who somehow found my photography and was really like, just really liked it.
Yeah.
And I looked on her page, and all she had was a point and shoot camera.
Wow.
And all she did was just take pictures. I call it the homestead. It was really like it was a trailer, double wide, in this plot of land.
Yeah.
And they were, what the kids would call Whiskey Tango, right?
Right.
She had 2 boys and a little girl. Dirty, but they were just out always playing, and she took these photographs that were amazing.
Wow.
Her husband had the shotgun on the bed with the Confederate flag in the back. Right. And I thought awesome. That was amazing. These photographs are, and she didn't have any technical knowledge.
Yeah.
She just had a point and shoot and loved photography. And she was like, "Can you give me any pointers? Because I don't, I'm about." And I just told her, "You know what? I love what you're doing.
Yeah.
These pictures of your family, these pictures of your husband, of your house, these things are amazing. Yeah. There's no way that anyone's ever going to take a better photograph of these."
I love that.
And it's just like amazing. And it's just like your friend Peggy too. It's like when you're naive, like what we were talking about even before.
Yes.
There's a certain just really, and I think that really those pictures on their own stood as art, like real legit. Her composition was naturally amazing.
Wow.
And I was just like, and we just followed each other until I just left MySpace. But
Can we go back to MySpace? What happened to MySpace?
The back to the happy days, right?
Man, we had fun on MySpace. I had so much fun on MySpace.
Yeah, that was MySpace changed my life.
Totally.
And it was in the weirdest way.
Yeah.
I found bands on there that I would have never found had there been no MySpace.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I agree.
it advanced my photography.
Yeah. Wow.
Skyrocket that thing.
Yeah.
Just because, again, MySpace made bands. Mediocre bands, superstars.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it was like.
Yeah, I agree.
We all made fun of Tom. We all made fun of Tom.
Yeah, we all made fun of Tom.
But yeah, he was good.
Yeah, but that's all. That's so important. I have all of my friends are very artistic, and it's funny because Lindsay, she like just came out of the closet the other day with a painting. It's like I called her and she said, "I'm doing a painting in the garage," and I went, "Holy shit!"
Wow. Okay.
It was incredible. I mean, the colors, the composition. I mean, I just was blown away. I just thought, well, there you are, artist. And she always said she didn't have it. Well, you just haven't done it. And I always tell people when, they say, "Well, I could never shoot like that." Sure, you can. Find your niche. It doesn't have to be what I'm doing. It doesn't, it doesn't have to be the camera I'm using. You just have to find I love Polaroids.
Yeah.
I love Polaroids. I mean, it could be any kind of anything, and that's, I love to encourage people doing art.
Yeah. And I hate to, again, I keep fucking beating a dead horse with this, but when my friends talk to me, I'm like, dude, photography isn't the end all. I could really give, and I keep saying the same thing over and over, but I'll repeat it again.
Right?
Photography ain't shit.
Yeah.
It's what you're passionate about that photography allows you to document and allows you to make art and allows you to express yourself. If you're into your kids in the South with your husband and his arsenal of guns.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
If you're into vacations and you're great at it, that's amazing. That's all photography is for. It's like, if you're into abstract anything, flowers. If you're into bees, like your friends, you can go out and be a great bee photographer.
Yes.
You know, and that's all it is. That's all photography is, just a tool.
Yes.
I can't draw, so it's easier for me to take a photograph of something.
Right, but you're damn good at it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you are. And I think that's, you know, and I think that most artists, creative people, they find something, you know, I could only doodle. Mm-hmm. Now all of a sudden I can sketch. I can, you know, like I just think that it's opening again these doors and parts of our, you know, our brain that we're not using. Mm-hmm. And I think that, you know, when you, you know, I've got, I have a cousin who's autistic, and man, is he incredible. We're the same age, and we grew up together, and he just picked up a guitar. Well, I'm sure he's probably kind of here and there, but he picked up a guitar and jammed. And the other day it was a Waylon Jennings song, and my Theo sent it to us, and I just went, holy shit. Mm-hmm. Like, he just picked up this guitar and just, you know, and it was, wow, you know, I just blew my mind. And so I feel like with Lindsay, it was the same thing. It was like, I'm doing this painting in the garage, you know, and it was, I think it's important to be creative. I think it's a good outlet. I think and you can do whatever you want. I mean, if stacking rocks is your gig, then do it, you know, just not on my land in New Mexico. I've had somebody who did that, but it's, you know, my brother, he's artistic, you know, he always says, well, you got this from dad and you got this from dad. Well, you know, my brother started at Traco karate when he was very young, and he trained, I believe, with grandfather Gracie. John was, you know, a black belt by the time he was 14. He was teaching adults, you know, and that's an art.
Wow.
That's an art.
Oh, yeah, it is.
And
ask Bruce Lee.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he's got a Martin that you just wouldn't believe, you know, and he plays guitar very well, and he plays electric guitar very well, and he can sing. But I think all of us do. Even people that are really good at art go, no, I'm not that good, or I'm not going to, you know, try this, you know, just do it. Do it. If you sound horrible, well, we know you sound horrible, and, you know, maybe try something else, but try it.
And again, I try to tell people this as well, too. It's like doing it to express yourself and be creative. You're not going to be Picasso.
That's right.
You know, you're not going to be Frida.
No.
No one is.
No.
And there's very few people on the planet in the history of the humanity that have that kind of talent. So we're not going to, don't worry about making art.
Yes.
Worry about expressing yourself and being creative.
I love that.
You know, that's what I think is more important than anything else.
Yes, absolutely.
Because that runs your imagination, and then that puts you, I think, in a better place spiritually than being on Facebook fucking talking shit about other people.
Exactly. Yeah. God, amen. High five, high five. Totally. Yeah, I agree.
All right, so we got projects lined up. Hopefully we'll get you making some prints here pretty soon.
Yeah, yes, I'd love that. And thank you. Thank you for this. This was awesome and incredible.
Thank you. I really appreciate you coming. Next time we'll probably do it outside or something and have some whiskey while we're doing it and get crazy or something. You know, talk more shit about some of these people that are in our way with creatively, let's just say.
I love that.
Well, thank you so much. I could keep talking to you forever, but
you too,
some of us got to
eat,
I think.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.